Hello, my beautiful ladies everywhere. Welcome to the garden. Welcome to Garden Conversations with Rose. We in the garden have chosen to focus on balance as it relates to support, dignity, and justice. As I'm thinking about she needs balance, I am going down a memory lane. So I recall very vividly as a child going to the community shop on many occasions when my mom would send us, most often to purchase sugar or sometimes rice. Back then, the storekeepers kept a scale with two receptacles on either side, one in which the weights would be kept and held, and the other where the goods that needed to be weighed would be kept. So back then, sugar was kept in paper bags. So, for example, when I came and asked for a half a pound of sugar or a pound and a half or 2 pounds of sugar, the storekeeper would have her paper bag using a scoop, place in the amount of sugar, whatever amount it was, and in the same vein, have on the scales on the other side the weights that corresponded with the amount of sugar I required. Sometimes some adjustment had to be made. So if there was an insufficient amount of sugar, the scoop would be used to place some more. If there was too much, depending on the weights and what I had asked for, some would be removed. The idea was to ensure that either party, both the storekeeper and myself, buying on behalf of my mom, we would both be receiving our just dues. If the storekeeper was careless, or not paying attention and constantly with myself or even all the other customers kept giving us more than the amount of sugar, although what the weights would have said was one thing and she gave us a lot more. Over time, eventually she would be at a loss, and in the local Dominican term we would say she would kool, meaning she would go bankrupt because she kept giving away, there would be no profit. And in similar fashion, if I had requested a pound of sugar, and although she had the weights, and she gave me less than the amount that I had asked, that would be an issue for my mom. It would mean that we would have been robbed. It wouldn't be fair. There would be no right justice here. All in all, on either side for both parties, equity needed to be established. A balancing of the scales needed to be established in order to ensure that both parties are receiving the just dues. As I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking about balance and balancing the scales as it relates to us and support and justice and dignity, I want us first and foremost as females, first with ourselves, to take responsibility and be accountable as far as our balance is concerned. I need us to think deeply about what the word dignity means to us, how much we can ensure that we are recognizing when our dignity is at risk. So if I'm standing, when I stood in the shop and I'm realizing that the storekeeper is giving me less than the amount I had asked for, I could simply say something, or if I didn't want to say, I could simply let my mom know and it would be rectified or dealt with. The storekeeper herself needed to know that she had to preserve her profit. So I'm saying, first and foremost, for all of us as women within ourselves, we must first take responsibility for dignity. We must also know where the support that we need is coming from. Is it coming from the right source? And of course, we need to push for justice. But of course, as we take it further, I want us to know as well that we also need to think about the parts that we are playing in the whole scheme of things, where justice is concerned, where support is concerned, even if it's forthcoming from the other side, how are we ourselves helping ourselves? Are we just standing aside, not attempting to do anything? That is something to think about as we think about equity and justice. Are we trying to do things on the side to show that we have unclean hands and then cry foul and demand justice when we ourselves had created the issue? That is something we may need to think about. As much as it is important for justice to prevail and our dignity to be intact and the support needs to be forthcoming, we need to think about our own participation. We need to think about how we ourselves can be responsible and accountable. We need to think about how much support that we can give to each other, particularly when the situation or the issue is a common one. Are we going to tear down the other person, the other female, or are we going to band together, to stand together, to even up things, to balance the scales so that we can improve our lives, we can become the best version of ourselves, and we can support, and for those of us females who have children, can be the correct role model that we ought to be for them. For Women in March, even when the day, International Women's Day, would have passed. And remember to be good and kind to yourself, and of course, always, always to someone else as well.